Good morning. Time now, a few minutes after 8 o'clock in the morning in Tokyo, Friday, March the 5th, 2021. I can't believe it's already March. We welcome to another edition of the World Bank Group morning seminar organized by the World Bank Tokyo office. My name is Koichi Omori. I am Senior External Affairs Officer of the World Bank based in Tokyo. For those of you who joined us for the first time, we organize lots of interesting seminars starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, almost every Friday in the Japan Standard Time. In the last 3 years, we have been introducing the latest activities as to how the World Bank Group supports the developing countries, as well as the latest report put together by the World Bank Group, presented by our specialists and economists. This morning, we have a special edition as we are honored to have Edward Olobo Okere, the Director of the Governance Global Practice, with us connecting from Washington. Good morning, Ed. How are you? Or good evening to you. You're still muted.
Good morning, Koichi. Nice to speak with you again.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us this morning in Tokyo time. 2 years ago from now, March in 2019, Ed came to Tokyo in person as a senior member of Japanese Nationals Recruitment Mission. And we were pleased at that time to organize a face-to-face seminar on the challenges and perspectives of the governance sector, featuring him as the keynote speaker. So this is the second time for us to have him in our outreach effort, and I would like to warmly welcome back to our seminar programs, Ed. Thank you very much for joining this morning.
You are most welcome, Richie.
Great, thank you very much. Title of the discussion this morning is a deep dive into governance and institutions. For the next 30-40 minutes, we'll listen to Ed sharing what the World Bank Group does in the governance and institutions. And really, we are going deeper on the topic with a specific focus on GovTech program. And I'm sure he will discuss what that means during his presentation. As usual, we already received some questions from the viewers in advance, and thank you very much for sending those questions to us. Please keep sending your questions even during the presentation. I'll read those questions, asking the Ed to respond to those questions after the keynote presentation. So with that, I'd like to ask Ed to come in and then start your presentation. Ed, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Koichi. And good morning to everyone. Many thanks for attending today's presentation. As Koichi mentioned, I will be talking about the governance global practice and what we do at the World Bank. Today, I will talk briefly about what the governance global practice does, much more broadly, then focus on GovTech, as Koichi already said. The vision of the governance global practice is to support client countries in building capable, efficient, inclusive, and accountable institutions to deliver public services. This is critical for returning to sustainable growth after COVID-19, and it is at the heart of the World Bank's twin goals of ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity. We do this through business lines focusing on two things: managing the bureaucracy and managing public finances. Next slide. I would like to share a short video on what the governance global practice does before I continue with my presentation.
And let's not mince words. We need to deal with the cancer of corruption. In country after country, it is the people who are demanding action on this issue. They know that corruption diverts resources from the poor to the rich, increases the cost of running businesses, distorts public expenditures, and deters foreign investors.
a coherent and coordinated approach keeping countries' PFM reform plan at the center have allowed Bangladesh public financial management institutions to drive respective reforms successfully. The PFM systems efficiently executed elements of the government's COVID-19 response and continue to benefit citizens.
One of the first global practices we turned to was the governance practice, as we got to work in finding solutions to rebuild Somalia's core institutions, and this was not an easy task after a period of more than 2 decades of conflict. The operation took an innovative, results-based approach and included very practical steps to reform financial management systems, to strengthen intergovernmental fiscal relations, and ultimately to scale up education and health services at the federal state level, where service delivery had been absent for decades.
Trust funds have helped support us in the Africa region in developing knowledge frontiers and practical tools for supporting governance work across the continent, and they couldn't be more important. Whether it's work on supporting tax administration, public financial management, legal judicial reforms and anti-corruption, or our work on financial accountability, trust funds have long helped us advance a very strong governance agenda and to help us fulfill the role of poverty reduction and improve prosperity across the Africa region.
Now we are undertaking, with the help of the World Bank, to develop a new version of this open data portal. Also, we undertook many training sessions on open data, and we trained many people who are working on the open data within the ministries, and they are managing data within the ministries.
Expect to scale up our open government work, notably for the 4th National Action Plan for 2020-2022, and also by leveraging on the 100 million USD GovTech operation. GovTech can further incentivize open government reforms as disbursement-linked indicators and demonstrates how trust fund resources can be leveraged as complementary investment operations.
So thank you. So that video showed what we are doing. But now let me go into more specific details about our specific business lines. First, let's talk about the business lines that are focused on managing the bureaucracy. We have them shown on the screen currently. So the first one that I would like to talk about is the public institutions reforms. And what we do under this business line is that we focus on improving public institutions for better policy making and implementation. We cover issues like public administration reform, including reform of justice institutions. We also work on issues like center of government and coordination within and across levels of government. We also try to work on the development of a whole of government approach. The second business line focused on managing the bureaucracy is the decentralization or subnational governance business line. This aims to promote an integrated approach to decentralization by improving intergovernmental, administrative, and fiscal systems and building the capacity of subnational governments to deliver public services. The third business line is the GovTech, and this focuses on promoting and facilitating the adoption of GovTech solutions in the public sector for government operations, service delivery, and engagement with citizens. GovTech is an approach for public sector modernization, and it is a key business line for the governance global practice. I will talk a lot more on this later in my presentation. The fourth business line is the anti-corruption and open government. This supports practical approaches to fostering openness and transparency and controlling corruption in client countries. Most of you know that it is important for corruption to be tackled for us to achieve the development outcome that we are seeking in various countries. Next slide. Now, the set of business lines that focus on helping clients to manage public finances include public financial management and public investment management. This area supports countries to mobilize resources and spend better through sound public financial management systems. Over the years, our approach has evolved from just focusing on core PFM institutions and systems to sectoral intervention to improve service delivery in specific sectors like health and education. The second business line supporting managing public finances is domestic resource mobilization. This area supports generating resources for public services and investment, and it includes things like strengthening tax administration and increasing transparency and effectiveness of revenue collection. The third business line supporting managing of public finances is state-owned enterprises reform. Specifically, we are focusing on supporting countries in improving the governance of their SOEs so that they can improve performance and increase their contributions to economic development. And the fourth business line is the fiduciary assurance that we provide to bank-financed operations. So we have a set of financial management specialists that work on ensuring that the proceeds of any credit or loan are used for the purposes intended and with due regard to economy and efficiency. So as Koichi said earlier on, we are really going to try to talk a lot more about GovTech in this presentation. So now I'm going to ask for you to watch another video, which is on GovTech.
Effective governments are at the heart of reducing poverty and boosting shared prosperity. And effectiveness in delivering essential services to improve people's lives is what the new GovTech Global Partnership is all about. GovTech puts people first and brings governments into the 21st century by strengthening institutions and capacities that improve government's performance while fighting corruption. GovTech is a whole-of-government approach to digitalization that promotes simple, accessible, and efficient government. It aims to promote the use of technology to transform the public sector and improve service delivery to citizens and businesses. In India, for example, the digital stack has transformed millions of people's lives. The platform grants people universal access to digital identity, public services, and electronic banking. Other countries are taking note. The demand for GovTech is rising, and the World Bank Group is meeting this demand through the GovTech Global Partnership. Research also shows that e-government can contribute to greater government effectiveness and lower perceptions of corruption. Mobile or web-based services also reduce red tape and opportunities for graft. GovTech can increase government's efficiency by reducing time and costs of transaction, while increasing transparency and accountability. Every online transaction creates valuable data. Making this data publicly accessible can increase transparency. When government solicits citizen feedback, these interactions can build public trust in government. Paired with enabling legislation and regulation, GovTech solutions can support stronger coordination across government. The GovTech Global Partnership supports leading and aspiring countries on their transformation journeys, bringing together governments, development partners, and technology companies. The GovTech Global Partnership will help countries transform how they deliver services to citizens and businesses. Together, let's bring governments into the 21st century by putting people first.
Thank you. So let's have the presentation back. From the video, you already have heard what GovTech is, but let me just elaborate. GovTech is a whole of government approach to public sector modernization that promotes simple, efficient, and transparent government, with the citizen at the center of the reforms. Our tagline is putting people first. The approach to GovTech is citizen-centric, including universally accessible services and simple and efficient government systems, using a whole of government approach. This whole of government approach is a fundamental shift from silo-based models and is a prerequisite for successful integrated models of digital government. The GovTech agenda also encompasses the use of disruptive technology like machine learning, blockchain, and others. It includes public data platforms to enable private sector and individuals to use public data to create new value-added services and products. Also, it includes establishing or encouraging the growth of local tech ecosystems in various countries. And finally, it's also about greater use of public-private partnerships to leverage private sector solutions, knowledge, and experience to address public sector challenges. Next slide. Now, let me just take you through the evolution of digital systems in the public sector. So we see that GovTech has evolved from what it used to be, analog systems, to what it is today. In many countries, the term e-government and digital government is often used. However, if we look at digital transformation as a continuum from the early days of analog government, we see clearly how different GovTech is. Early public sector digitization efforts in the 1970s and 1980s focused mainly on single sector-based solutions to support productivity and functionality. So like just doing something, improving public financial management system with IFIMIS, or having a system for managing HR, human resource management. The emergence of the internet and web technologies in the 1990s provided opportunities for governments to have a new window to reach citizens on the internet. However, these windows were rather limited in form and function. With e-governments that were developed in the late 1990s to 2005, countries experimented with what we call one-stop government concepts, integrating systems facilitated by interoperability platforms to enable automated digital exchange. Now, digital government took this further, focusing on user-driven services, government as a platform, and better use of data for public sector. For instance, for better evidence-based policies. GovTech is the latest generation of these reforms, using a whole of government approach to provide a seamless e-government experience to users. GovTech solutions can be implemented at the central or subnational level of government. Next slide. This is meant to give you an overview of how GovTech complements other initiatives at the World Bank. We are collaborating with sectorally focused global practices in the bank, like finance, competition, and innovation, the digital development, global practice, education, health, social protection, and jobs, as well as other World Bank digital initiatives like ID4D, G2P, and cybersecurity, among others. This collaboration leads to better outcomes at the country level and fosters learning across GPs. Next slide. The GovTech vision is one of integrated and human-centered services. Building on the foundation of connectivity, digital payments, and ID services, GovTech aims to transform the current way of service delivery seen in many countries today, that is, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, that is people having to collect many documents, wait in line, visit different agencies with lots of administrative burden and even opportunities to ask for and receive bribes, people having to travel from remote areas to rural areas, to a situation where citizens can access services using a one-door model. That's what we have on the right-hand side. So the right-hand side is really where GovTech wants to take the delivery of public services. Next slide. There are four main focal areas of GovTech. The first one is user-centric service delivery, which again points to the fact that these are human-centered online services and accessible by low-cost digital solutions. The second focal area is core government operations, which refers to the modernization of core systems and effective use of shared platforms by governments. The third one is mainstreaming citizen engagement. And this is a very important area that focuses on accountability tools and use of technology to advance government's efforts at greater transparency and accountability. The last part is GovTech enablers, and this refers to the cross-cutting areas of digital transformation and building an environment that fosters innovations in the public sector. Next slide. So this slide is meant to give you some ideas of the impact that GovTech can have. GovTech has shown to have a positive impact on different aspects of governance. Here we see that there is a positive relationship between e-government maturity and government effectiveness. That is on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, e-services and corruption perception. So the more matured a country is in e-government or GovTech, the more effective the country is perceived to be in terms of government effectiveness indicator. And also the country ranks better on corruption perception. And these are all kind of logical. While these don't control for other factors, they show that there is a relationship. Over 145 countries have taken steps towards using technology for public sector modernization. Next slide. This is about the GovTech Global Partnership that was launched last year by the World Bank to assist countries who are aspiring to digitally transform. The partnership aims to bring together development partners, leading and aspiring GovTech countries, private sector partners, and civil society towards a shared vision of GovTech transformation in various countries. The partnership is supported by a multi-donor trust fund currently financed by the governments of Austria, South Korea, and Switzerland. And many other countries are in the process of joining the partnership. The partnership supports our work in three areas: analytical work and thought leadership, global public goods, and country and regional engagement. Next slide. This slide shows some of the outputs under the first component, that is the analytical and thought leadership. And these outputs include mostly policy notes and research reports. Next slide. On this slide, you will find reports and other interesting materials that we have produced, and this is available on the World Bank website. That's if you go to the World Bank website, you have a /GovTech. We have a page dedicated to providing these materials to the public. Next slide. Under the second component, that is the global public goods and convening, we have a range of products, learning opportunities, and knowledge sharing activities. These include the GovTech Maturity Index, GovTech Online Knowledge Platform, and 101 course, and several GovTech guidance notes and how-to notes for policymakers. We organized various seminars on this topic as well as in collaboration with other partners. Next slide. On this slide, we focus on the third component, which is the regional and country engagement. The GovTech partnership supports regional and country engagements. This support could be in the form of financing of GovTech investments, technical assistance for implementation of GovTech solutions, or both. Recently, we launched a call for proposal, which focused on the thematic areas of supporting the COVID-19 response and recovery, organizing for effective digital government, government service delivery and citizen engagement, data platforms and governance, and a special team of universal accessibility. There were lots of proposals that were submitted, about 74 of them, and we selected 7. I just give you an idea of the 7 that we selected. One was focused on Moldova, meant to support the government of Moldova in the implementation of eLPA and eArchive platforms. The second one is supporting digital transformation in Guatemala. The third one is supporting GovTech assessment and roadmap in Afghanistan. The fourth one is supporting Kenya on inclusive citizen-centric GovTech. The fifth one is supporting Mongolia on prioritized human-centric digital services. The sixth one is supporting Brazil in scaling up the digital community procurement application. And the last one is supporting Indonesia to accelerate digital transformation in the public sector. Next slide. As you can see from this map, since 1995, the World Bank has supported almost 2,000 digital government-related projects. The bulk of these projects happen to be in Africa, but we also see very strong support for other regions like Europe and Central Asia, South Asia, and East Asia and the Pacific. It is important to note that if we look at the activities initiated within the last 5 years, we will see that they are more focused on GovTech, not just some aspects of GovTech. Now, let's go to the next slide. If we again look at our portfolio, the portfolio of the governance global practice, as of July 2020, we see that 135 of our lending operations out of a total of 213 are GovTech projects. This speaks a lot to how significant this topic has become for our global practice. Next slide. We are taking an integrated and multidisciplinary approach to GovTech implementation through investment lending, technical assistance, research, and analytics. GovTech is a multidisciplinary endeavor, and it calls for a whole of World Bank approach to design and implementation. Nearly every sector is employing technology in projects, whether it's tele-ed, tele-education, or in social protection, even in agriculture and water. So we work together to bring our expertise to the clients. In many cases, the projects are co-led. Earlier on, I explained how we are working with all the other global practices that are sectorally focused. Next slide. Our GovTech implementation activities include conducting diagnostics to identify areas of support and financing and technical assistance to modernize public administration functions like financial management system, HR system, and procurement system. We are also supporting integrated service delivery to ensure efficiency and quality of public service delivery. And we are supporting a whole of government coordination as well as capacity building, which is very critical to the implementation of GovTech solutions. Next slide. These are examples of projects targeted outcomes that we cover when we implement GovTech solutions. There are 4 focal areas, and these are related to the areas that I mentioned in the previous slide in terms of what GovTech is covering. And this includes increased access to services. So the focus of GovTech is services, public delivery of public services to citizens and to businesses. Then improvement in core government systems and processes. Thirdly, enhanced government-citizens interactions. And finally, improvement in the analog complements, which are also very critical to implementation of GovTech solutions. Next slide. Finally, I would like to conclude my presentation by sharing with you some interesting results we have seen in our GovTech work. First, in India, one-stop shop citizen service centers and e-service kiosks have enabled access to nearly 6 million beneficiaries in Madhya Pradesh. The LAC region, that is the Latin America and Caribbean region of the World Bank, also has some good examples. In Uruguay, for instance, their unified portal provides access to 90% of government services. In Argentina, over 5 million users have accessed e-services using e-filing and unified portals. In Albania, the regional ADISA one-stop service centers have served over 500,000 citizens and have achieved nearly universal satisfaction levels based on citizen surveys. These are just some examples of results that have been delivered by World Bank supported GovTech interventions in our clients' countries. Next slide. On this note, I would like to thank you for listening to the presentation. So I will now be ready to take your questions. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ed, for your keynote presentation discussing the challenges and perspectives of the governance sector with a specific focus on GovTech programs. We received the questions from the audience in advance, and some questions also coming in during your presentation. So let me read those questions, asking you to respond. First question, from Shimizu-san. Thank you very much for your question. What are the key things to encourage the digital technologies to take root in developing countries' public sectors? So this is the first question. So I would like to ask Ed to make a comment on this point. Thank you.
Okay. There are a number of things that are important, but I think a first and most important thing is commitment by the leadership of the various countries. In countries where you have committed leadership to having digital transformation, you actually have that taking root in their public sectors. And this commitment from political leadership is not only an issue for developing countries, but also it applies to developed countries. For instance, in developed countries like the United Kingdom, like South Korea, and other places where you have the political leadership well committed to digital transformation, and they have introduced visions like digital by default, then this happens. So you need committed leadership, political leadership. So that's number one. Then the second and the very important thing also is the skills, digital skills. There is the need to build digital skills in the public sector among civil servants who are going to be providing digitally enabled services and also operating the core functions of government. That is also important. Then another thing that is also important to be able to ensure that citizens are not discouraged is also to improve the infrastructure. Okay, the underlying infrastructure is also very important because in a country where you don't have good infrastructure, but government is providing digitally enabled services, and citizens, when they try to access government systems, are either down or not operational, they can be discouraged. Then also, if citizens cannot easily access, the internet is not good enough for them to be able to access, and so on and so forth, it can also discourage them. We have countries where, for instance, they've tried to implement digital solutions, but due to poor infrastructure, those efforts have been affected badly. So those are some of the points, but I can go on and talk about but those are very critical points. Then, of course, support by donors is also very important because, as you know, in many of the developing countries, they have huge development challenges, but they have very limited resources. So to the extent that donors can also support them, I think that can help. Back to you, Koichi.
Thank you very much. Next question, how to overcome the issues to be good governance through technologies, which has the concern to accelerate the difficulties or challenges. What kind of approach are taken the path for the inclusion, though there are so many disparities, including digital divide? How to prevent from the criminal activities? So these are a set of questions from one of the participants. So, if you would be able to respond, Ayat, please.
Okay. So I think technology can really help to address issues related to good governance. When you listen to what I was presenting, for instance, the GovTech, the various aspects of GovTech that we are working on, part of it is better service delivery to businesses and citizens. What we expect of our government, a government that is really functioning, is to be able to deliver services. Now, with GovTech, and you saw that also in the slide where I presented that countries that have matured somewhat in GovTech, they are ranked high on government effectiveness. So government can deliver better services. Another important aspect is, for instance, the control of corruption. You also saw in what I said that, the presentation I made, that governments that are well advanced on GovTech solutions in terms of using that to deliver services to businesses and citizens, they are perceived to be less corrupt. Okay, so that's another way where technology can help. Even in the government operations itself, one of the aspects of GovTech is digitizing core government operations. By doing that, you can be able to eliminate some of the human intervention and also be able to bring in some enhanced controls that can reduce corruption or corruption or corrupt activities. Then there is this aspect of citizen engagement. Okay, using technology, government can be more transparent, more accountable. Government can also be able to involve or include citizens in decision making. Okay, because the citizen government platform can be used to crowdsource ideas from citizens, to get citizens to participate in policy making and contribute also to monitoring implementation. And it can be used by governments to be able to provide information to citizens and be more accountable. So that's how technology, some of the ways technology can be used to address issues relating to good governance. Now, with respect to the issue of inclusion, I think this is an important issue. And there are various aspects to this. But the way we have supported countries to do this with respect to technology is to look at the countries and see how best GovTech can be used to provide services that will allow most citizens to have access. Okay, so we, for instance, at the bank, we talk of accessible GovTech solutions, accessible GovTech solutions. And there are various ways to do that. We know in many of our client countries, there is high mobile rate penetration. So if you really want services to, if you want citizens to be able to access services, it's best to make the services M-enabled, mobile enabled. If you develop the services in a way that you need laptop or desktop computers to be able to access services, then you are likely to exclude a large chunk of the population. And I think this may be the case even in developed countries as well, where I think a lot more people are on mobile than they are on laptop or desktop computers. Then another thing we also do, and I mentioned that in my presentation, is what we call this one-stop shop, okay? Whereby, you may have some people who do not have access to mobile devices or laptop, or they may not be digitally literate. But the government, as part of the deployment of GovTech solutions, they can have one-stop citizen service centers where government can provide the laptop, the desktop computer and internet access, and there can be people who can assist those who are not technologically literate to be able to use those services. And this can be done also in rural areas, to even take the services to rural dwellers who may not be very literate. Now, with respect to preventing criminal activities, yeah, we know technology has brought a lot of good promise in terms of improving services that we have been discussing now, and it can be used to be able to do a lot of good things. But at the same time, technology can also be used to do a lot of bad things. So what we do from our side is that as we are working with governments to develop GovTech solutions, we pay a lot of attention to issues of security, cyber security, data prevention, data security, and all of those other important aspects. Back to you, Koichi.
Thank you very much. Next, let me read a comment and question from Mariama-san, who is a JEC expert in the South Africa. I'm not sure if he's now joining us from South Africa at this moment, but let me read the question and comment. GovTech looks excellent, but from the presentation material, I have a couple of concerns or questions. Firstly, regarding the GovTech, what specific product, application software, or cloud platform are you thinking of using to move this forward? I think it would be better to communicate more clearly that there is no concern about being controlled by any one particular country. Secondly, I think we should think about networks between countries further down the road. Data standards should be unified, but security concern will increase and international connections. I believe that by separating national connectivity from domestic GovTech, government efficiency and convenience can be achieved much faster. These are comments and questions from Mariama-san. Ed, over to you.
Thanks, Koichi. This is a very good question. I would like to explain that GovTech does not promote a single platform or tool. We make sure we give good advice on the entire cost of deploying different technological solutions. This can mean software development costs, cost of hardware, license fees, maintenance fees, and so on and so forth. And we promote the most efficient solutions. We are also working with others who are developing open source solutions or universally accessible blueprints for core government systems. We also play a role in helping countries learn and borrow solutions from each other. The upcoming WDR, that is WDR 2021 report on Data for Better Lives includes the key findings and recommendations of the World Bank on the potential for data to advance development objectives, as well as the policy recommendations to ensure equitable access for poor people and poor countries, creating trust, environment, and the role of regional and international cooperation in addressing data governance challenges. GovTech knowledge products and upcoming WDR report may provide useful guidance to the developing countries to address the challenges that the person who asked this question enumerated. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you very much, Ed. Let me continue reading a question from Kobayashi-san from the JICA Gypsy office. What is the challenge, biggest challenge to achieve the universal accessible public services in the scope of GovTech? I think it depends on the situation in each country, but if there is a common tendency in each country regarding that point, I would appreciate if you could share with me. So that's the question from Kobayashi-san, please, Ed.
Okay, so I think this is related to the answer I've given to one of the questions before, but ICT infrastructure is a constraint, okay? But what we are emphasizing in our GovTech approach is to use technology that is available, okay? We can't wait for perfect infrastructure to be in place. Yes, there are lots of complementary actions that are needed, including improving literacy, as I mentioned earlier on, as well as IT literacy, improving digital birth and death records systems, as well as universal digital ID systems. We also need complementary reforms in telecoms, in ICT sectors to bring down and lower the cost of internet. But as I explained earlier on, we look at countries, we see what is the best solution that can be deployed. I mentioned the example of mobile-enabled services earlier on, where we have high mobile penetration rates. So these are the approach that we are taking, just customize the solution to be able to address some of the challenges.
Thank you. Let me read two questions, the question that we received during your presentation. First one, question from Yoshida-san. I agree the public trust to the government and digital transformations are important to ensure GovTech approach to the public sector. My question is how the World Bank support quality of data management method and policy as well as fact-checking systems through the digital transformation. That's one question. And then another question from Shimamoto Sensei. Thank you very much for your question posted on the YouTube. Could you elaborate on the role of private sector from the technology side? So that's the another question. So I'd like to ask Ed to come in and respond to those points. Thank you.
Okay, so this first question you said is on public trust and data management. Can you repeat the first question?
Yes, that's the question is how the World Bank supports the quality of data management and the fact-checking system through the digital transformation.
Okay, so a most important aspect of our engagement is that we try to really know the level of capability of every country before we start intervening. Okay, and we do that through the various assessments that we do. And based on that, then we determine what kind of technical assistance that is required for us to be able to build their capability, whether it's to improve quality of data management or to deal with any aspect. As you may expect, countries at different level of maturity. Okay, there are countries that are, some of the developing countries that have reasonably good regulations, skills, and so on and so forth to be able to deal with all of this. So based on our assessments, and our assessment is not just focused on skills, but also regulations on all the various aspects that are necessary. Based on our assessment, then we develop an appropriate technical assistance, and then we provide that. To the second question on the role of the private sector on the technology development, this is really very important. The approach we promote is not for the public sector to do, but I think I referred to that in my presentation. We encourage public-private sector partnership to make this happen, because what you find is that the development or advances in the use of technology in the private sector has gone much further ahead of the public sector. So there is really a lot of learning for the public sector to do from the private sector. And the private sector is able to supply a lot of the services that the public sector also needs for digital transformation, whether it's in the form of hardware, it's in the form of software, also in the form of skills as well. A lot of the developed countries and also developing countries that are engaged in digital transformation, they are hiring skills from the private sector to be able to complement the upgrading of skills of civil servants. They are also procuring services from the private sector. So services to be able to deploy GovTech solutions and so on and so forth. And then they are also procuring software and hardware from the private sector. So the role of the private sector is really very critical. If you go back to the slide where I had explained the GovTech partnership, part of what we emphasize there is that the partnership to be able to advance GovTech across the globe is about bringing together not just the public sector, but also the private sector, because we see the criticality of the private sector in this transformation effort in the public sector.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to read a question from Professor Yoshino. Thank you for your questions posted on YouTube. Nice presentation. It seems that incentives to the government to encourage GovTech, the budget support and other incentives should be provided. What kind of support do you think it is important? And then second question, cybersecurity is important to implement the GovTech. Is there any leadership taken by the World Bank in the area of cybersecurity? So those are two questions from Professor Yoshino. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. These are also very important questions. So in terms of incentive for government to implement, fundamentally, yes, the donors, the bank and others can provide budget support or financing support. But it is also very important that before the support is provided, that there is a certain level of commitment by the government or the leadership of the country to really engage in digital transformation. When that is available, then depending on the country, then development partners like the World Bank or Japan and other donors can decide whether what is needed is technical assistance or is financing. Because you could have countries, for instance, where they have the money. Okay, I mean, you have a number of developing countries that are resource rich. Okay, and so they have the money to finance. Okay, but they just don't have the technical expertise. Okay, so in some cases, maybe what is required is technical assistance or technical expertise. But in many of the cases, especially the low-income countries, fragile and conflict-affected countries, they need a lot of resources. So budget support or financing will be important incentives for them to be able to engage in digital transformation. Now, come to the issue of cyber security. I have to maybe explain one thing that as a bank, I think one thing we don't want to be accountable for is challenges that may occur in individual countries, for instance, with respect to access, on unauthorized access to their data, to their systems, and so on and so forth. So as a result of that, we don't engage, for instance, in developing certain software or security software or whatever. But what we do is we provide support to clients in the form of advice, in the form of financing. We also develop guidance notes and so on and so forth, and we use that to be able to support countries. But you will know how important it is that if we were, for instance, to take a front seat kind of position on cyber security for individual countries, that could dangerously expose the World Bank to a lot of liability. But so what we do is we support them with advice, technical assistance, and financing. We also issue guidance and standards that they may apply.
Thank you very much. Lastly, let me read the question and comment from Professor Hisamatsu, and then the Kurihira-san. First comment from Hisamatsu Sensei. You showed that the corruption perception and digital transformation correlate across countries. I would like to know an instance that corruption perception and digital transformation deepened over time. That's the one question. And then second of all, we are now running the Japanese nationals recruitment programs, DFSP programs. And then we have actually a governance specialist posted in the among the positions that we are now advertising for Japanese nationals. In that regard, one participant said, Kurihira-san said, as your team member in the GovTech section, and he's maybe thinking about applying, which kinds of skills over there, other than ICT literacy, is important? Is it helpful? It is helpful to explain mentioning the role of your team member in the project with the government. So he would like to know, any skills other than ICT would be critical to become a member in your team. So combining on those points, it'd be great in your final remarks. It'd be great if you can, share your messages to encourage the potential applicant in the DFSP position currently we are running. With that, I'd like to ask Ed to make the final remarks. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for these questions. So on the first one, the relationship between perception of corruption and digital transformation is very logical. So let me just explain, and then you will you will appreciate this relationship. Now, if you have a country where you have digitally enabled services, and much of the services are digitally enabled, what it will mean is that citizens can sit in their homes or offices or businesses and just access government services, and they don't have to interact with public officials. Now, if you don't interact with a person, it is much more difficult to be able to ask for and receive bribe. Okay, human interaction, physical contact or interaction it's much necessary to be able to facilitate asking for and receiving a bribe. So that's why, for instance, in countries that are providing or have matured in the provision of digitally enabled services, they tend to be perceived as less corrupt because there is fewer opportunities. In fact, there is fewer opportunities for corruption. With respect to the DFSP program, I would like to explain that this is an important program and we really encourage our audience to apply. I think we specified a number of skills that are required, but there is the IT skills, but there is also the soft skills. Okay, there are things about business processes, because part of what you do in GovTech is also business engineering, business process re-engineering. Okay, because we don't just take the current businesses and digitize them. We actually review them, we make them more efficient before then we digitize. Okay, so somebody can have skills in that area. Then somebody can also have skills in how to build skills of civil servants, because as I explained earlier on, part of what is required is digital skills in the public sector. Then there are all other issues like coordinations that are also very important. Then we've talked about a number of other areas like, okay, cybersecurity will still be IT, but in terms of IT, you can have IT that is really about core hardware, software, and there are also that different aspects also that are important. So I guess that's about all the questions. So I would like to thank all of you again for attending this presentation today, and many thanks, Koichi, for organizing. I really look forward to interacting with Japan again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Edward Olobo Okere, the Director of the Governance Global Practice, connecting us from Washington, D.C. this morning. Ed, thank you very much for your time and being with us this morning. Thank you. Okay, next week we are featuring the State of Economic Inclusion Report 2021, the potentials to scale. We have Colin Andrews, Program Manager in the Social Protection and Jobs Global Practice of the World Bank. This is going to be starting at 8 a.m. on the Friday, March 12th in Japan Standard Time. Please check our website for details of this seminar as well as other upcoming online seminars. So with that, I would like to once again thank everyone watching the seminar. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you very much. See you next week.